Yesterday, you saw how I had to sit here and just destroy Harris Faulkner and the rest of those fools and outnumbered who straight up lied about President Joe Biden's speech to Howard University at the commencement on Saturday. And it seems that after his speech, it really has pissed off the entire Fox ecosystem, which means that they sent out the talking points, attack Biden on him attacking white supremacy. That's typically what happens when you see all the Fox shows repeating the same talking points. So Fox and Friends the day after, you have Rachel Campos Duffy, Peter Hegseth, and Will Cain. They were talking about his speech, and listen to the sheer hatred and stupidity that comes out of these fools' mouths.
Diversity. He didn't talk about the border. He didn't talk about the threat of the Chinese Communist Party. He didn't even talk about the threat of Islamic terrorism. Instead, he said the biggest threat to our country is, in fact, the threat of white supremacy.
That's right. He said.
Stop right there. Okay. So Will Cain, who I repeatedly destroyed when I was at CNN, he decided, Biden didn't talk about this or this or this. He's like, the biggest threat is white supremacy. All right. So, okay. I want y'all to remember that particular point because I'm going to play a law enforcement expert who literally called that the greatest threat. So just we gonna get to that in a second, but just play more of the Fox News stupidity of Will Cain, Rachel, and Peter Hegseth.
That meanwhile, a record number of actual terrorists, as you talked about, suspects have been coming across our border. Take a look at this list here. So we have in October through March, in 2022 alone, 98 people. Look at the increase.
Look at the one in the bottom right. That's 4 years combined. 8 total on the terror watch list encountered. These are the encounters, by the way, not the gotaways.
Exactly.
So far, 168. It's just listening to that speech, so divisive, so cynical. It plays into the conversation they want to be having about MAGA Republicans and threats to democracy. It's not grounded in actual threats, or at least ones that I just look at it and I go, this is where we're at. And it's so
Stop.
It's not true.
Now, I want you to understand, this conversation was actually held on the 1-year anniversary of the shooting in Buffalo where 10 black people were gunned down by a white supremacist, by a racist. No mention of that. And then you see look at that bottom right number. Look at the number. There were more white domestic terrorists on January 6, 2021 than they claim that's crossing the border. And then you heard him. Well, they would have blamed MAGA. Yeah. And then on the exact same day that they were complaining about Biden's speech, you had hundreds of racist patriot folks, the patriot right, marching in Washington, D.C. Literally, they were marching in Washington, D.C. I guess Fox News didn't get the memo or the email about that racist march. Okay, more of the stupidity.
Believe it to be true.
Yeah.
That's right.
If he believed it to be true, we'd be talking about a level of incompetency that would be unmatched in the Oval Office, in the White House. If it were to be true, we'd be looking at a president that is totally ignorant of the threat of the Chinese Communist Party, Islamic terrorism, terrorists coming through the southern border. We would be looking at a president so frivolous and ignorant that it would represent in and of itself a national security threat.
Yeah.
The sheer ignorance, the incompetence, the stupidity is you, Will Cain. It's you, Rachel Campos Duffy. It's you, Peter Hegseth. When the three of you combined don't even have the IQ to match Joe Biden. You three are sheer idiots. But we haven't gotten to the good stuff just yet. Press play.
But it's not true. and
No.
he doesn't believe it's true. It's a pander, and it is a naked and shameless and an embarrassing pander that he has to.
All right, Will Kane just said it's not true. I want y'all to put a pin in that video right there, and I want y'all to right now play. Here's the video of the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Christopher Wray, speaking about white domestic terrorism and the threat to the homeland.
We're also keeping our eye on domestic terrorism from people who've come up with their own customized belief systems and hope to advance them through violence. We have, through the third quarter of this fiscal year, had about, give or take, 100 arrests in the international terrorism side, which includes the homegrown violent extremism. This year. But we've also had just about the same number, again, don't quote me to the exact digit, on the domestic terrorism side. And I will say that a majority of the domestic terrorism cases that we've investigated are motivated by some version of what you might call white supremacist violence, but it includes other things as well. A huge chunk of those domestic terrorism investigations involve racially motivated, violent extremist motivated terrorist attacks. And the majority of those, of the racially motivated, violent extremist attacks, are fueled by some kind of white supremacy. And I would say that the most lethal activity over the last few years has been committed by those type of attackers. It used to be that some angry, demented guy living in mom's basement, not that there's anything wrong with that, in one part of the country is now able to communicate with a similarly angry guy in grandma's attic in another part of the country, and they get each other spun up now. And how to separate who's being aspirational versus who's being intentional. It won't shock you to learn, and hopefully not other members of the committee, that the amount of angry, hateful, unspeakable, combative, violent even rhetoric on social media exceeds what anybody in their worst imagination is out there. Terrorism moves at the speed of social media, and you have the ability of lone actors disgruntled in one part of the country to spin up similar like-minded individuals in other parts of the country and urge them into action.
Here we have the head of the FBI laying out the sheer threat of white domestic terrorism. Go to my iPad. This here's the New York Times. Top law enforcement officials say the biggest domestic terror threat comes from white supremacists. Who says that? The Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. It's his job to actually know these very threats. Last year, a former head of the Department of Homeland Security's intelligence branch filed a whistleblower complaint in which he accused the department of blocking a report about the threat of violent extremism and described white supremacists as having been exceptionally lethal in the abhorrent target attacks in recent years. Who was the president the previous year? The president the previous year was Donald Trump. The same Donald Trump who welcomed those white supremacists on January 6th. But on Fox News, oh no, Biden's the problem. They say Biden's lying, Biden's incompetent. The same Biden who spoke about the threat of white supremacy in his State of the Union address this year, in his address to Congress, the joint session when he first got there. This ain't new. Ain't the first time he said it. But you gotta understand, the white nationalist audience, they watch Fox News. That's why Fox is so angry at Biden because of this. Now, let's go back, because I have not played yet the best of the sheer stupidity of what we heard on Fox News. Press play.
He has to put a punctuation mark of, and I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting here at HBCU. Yes, you are. And you know what we could do? We could roll the tape of Joe Biden throughout his career as a politician and all of the racist statements that he has made. Look, not subject.
Again, Will Cain said he's only saying it because he said it at HBCU. Will Cain, you are an absolute liar. I exposed Harris Faulkner and her lies yesterday. He said it in the State of the Union. He said it in his first joint session of Congress. He said it in a summit at the White House. He said it in 2019 when he was running against Trump. You are when he was speaking in Iowa, 86.6% white in that particular town. You were lying. But you weren't bright when you were at CNN, which is why I was easily debating you. And so you absolutely are with the cast of dummies now at Fox News, people who clearly don't know how to use Google. Press play.
Objectively racist statements he has made throughout his career and say, this is your knight in shining armor? This is your man to take down white supremacy? He's pandering, and if it can't be seen, you're blind.
Well, it's also it's a political strategy, and we had on this guy named Gene from America First Legal, who uncovered that our federal law enforcement is actually going after these supposed white supremacists, and they had these ridiculous, comical profiles of pro-life moms and conservative dads, in rural America. And meanwhile, we have this list of 168 terrorists coming across our border in just the last few months. So that's crazy. But it's so, I'm going to just say it, I think it's evil. It's evil to take a country as good as ours, a country that really, if you look at people's everyday interactions with people of other races and cultures here in America, they're by and large, 99.9% peaceful, loving. People want to live in America the way Martin Luther King had it, where we don't see color, we look at people's character. That's who we are. And yet for political gain, because he has failed so much as a president and taken our country so down, he understands the only way he could win is to convince some pretty dumb college kids at that university if they believe him.
Well, what a disservice.
It's a disservice. If they believe that this country is full of white supremacists and that's our number one threat. But look, you saw in 2020, Pete, during those riots, a lot of people can be convinced that this is a racist country.
That's being taught at that university and at universities across America. So that statement is not surprising to the ears of those kids or to the ears of most college kids across America. They've been programmed to believe that is true, most of which have never left the country, never seen real. You want to see real racism? Travel the world. Yes. Travel the world outside of our borders. We have our sins of our past and things we've had to get through in this country. There's no doubt. But man, when you look at the way Americans live together in everyday life, ignoring the issue of race, it's a special thing, and they're trying to ruin that. Cynical.
No question about it.
You got 3 ignorant, incompetent white people at Fox News actually trying to tell black people, especially 4,000 black students at Howard University, that she called Howard graduates dumb. Let me explain something to you, dumbass Rachel Campos Duffy. My niece graduated summa cum laude from Howard with a degree in architecture and is getting her master's next year. I was there. You, Rachel, can kiss my ass. Will Cain, you can kiss my ass. And you know better, Will. And Peter Hegseth. And then, Peter, you go, then you question whether these black students have passports, whether they travel the world. You 3 dumbasses haven't even traveled Black America. I dare you, Peter Hegseth and Rachel Campos Duffy and Will Cain, I dare you to visit Howard University. They don't know racism, when those students were subjected to bomb threats? Today, Jackson State University was closed down because of a bomb threat. Numerous HBCUs across America endured bomb threats, and you three assholes have the audacity to say they know nothing about racism? What I need y'all to understand is that what you are witnessing is why I wrote this. They are angry that Joe Biden is calling out their audience. They're angry that the number one white nationalist in America, Tucker Carlson, is no longer employed there. White nationalism is literally the business plan of Fox News. And that's why they're upset, because Biden keeps calling it out. For you to dare say that these black students are dumb when Rachel composed Duffy? How did you get your job? Because your ass was on Big Brother. You don't know a damn thing. You have no real experience. And Will Kane, now you and I both know you a lightweight. Now, Will, we debated at CNN numerous times. Yeah, you from Texas. You went to the University of Texas. But Will, you are a lightweight, which is why Bomani destroyed you at ESPN, which is why Stephen A. Smith destroyed you at ESPN. But among the faithful at Fox News, you a bright, shining light. Because we all know all of them ain't bright bulbs in a dark-ass room. The reason I play all of that for y'all, because I need you to understand the sheer hatred that is going on in this country, and for you to understand what is at play and what their strategy is. And their strategy is they need to gin up their white base for next year's election. If you think I'm lying, remember, I destroyed Harris Faulkner, her outnumbered crew yesterday. They went on at noon yesterday. While we were on the air, Greg Gutfield had his own comments about Fox News. We're going to play those after the break. So one of the most incompetent people who has no business being on any news show on any network is Greg Gutfield. He decided to get involved, get his take on what's happening. Because, you know, I'm telling y'all, Fox News distributed their talking points across the network. And the gutless wonder himself, Greg Gutfield, this is what he had to say about Biden's speech and white supremacy.
I just think it's time that white people stop lying to black people. Right? Why do we lie to them? Why do we tell them, hey, when you get out into the real world, this is what you're going to face? That's a lie. It's an outright lie. White supremacy is not a threat to them. If you look at the ADL, who are very biased towards labeling everything a racist act, they found 25 murders, I guess, in 2022 attributed to extremism out of 26,000 homicides. 25 murders, two mass shootings. So it's rare, it's ugly, it's rare, but it sure as hell ain't the number one threat. That is the most obvious lie you could come up with. So he is lying. You have to ask, why do you lie to black people? Why do you lie to black people? Why do liberals feel that they have to do that? Because they need to keep blacks angry. They need to keep blacks close to them, right? This does not serve black people. If it doesn't serve black people, it doesn't serve white people either, because it creates conflict. The people who need to cleave blacks from whites do so because they realize there is profit in discontent. They're rent-seeking. As long as there's a problem, whether it's racism or whether it's homelessness. $1 billion went to homelessness. We don't know where it went, because you need a persistent crisis in order to keep your job. Consultants and corporations, right? Activists. You got to keep this lie going. And once blacks walk away from this lie, oh, they're going to be happy, but they're going to be pissed. And I'm so going to be there for that.
Greg, how many black people do you actually know? Seriously, Greg Gutfield, you ever been to Essence Festival? You ever been to the Cincinnati Music Festival? Congressional Black Caucus Foundation? Hell, Greg, has your pale ass ever been to an HBCU game? Ever? And then I love this here. It's the liberals and they're getting black people fired up. Dude, your white savior, Donald Trump, literally that was his campaign. He stoked white fear the moment he came down the escalator. That was what he did. The numbers don't lie. The dramatic increase in racial attacks, the dramatic increase in the sort of racial violence rhetoric on the social media. Donald Trump. And again, why were those white domestic terrorists outside the Capitol on January 6th? Because Donald Trump was angry about black people voting in Atlanta, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Detroit. He kept naming them. Oh, I'm sorry. He named them again in the CNN town hall, which was a joke. So I need people watching, I need you to understand the reason they are attacking Biden, and now this, black people are going to be pissed. Actually, that's why we don't watch you, Fox News. Because your business plan, which Roger Ailes created, was to attack black people. Shall we roll the tape when Bill O'Reilly attacked Snoop and Ludacris and all the other folks, how he was consistently attacked civil rights folks, and Tucker, and Hannity, and Laura? We can continue if you would like. And so I need people to watch and understand. And see, I told y'all how the role that other media outlets play in this here. Like, you take Mediaite. That's amazing. I can see it. Megyn Kelly can talk about burping, and Mediaite will run a story, but you notice they won't write up anything about this segment when we're fact-checking Fox News. I wonder why. I told y'all of a black host of the network who called me and said that would have been great to have me on the show, but her white producers didn't like my book title. Yeah, seriously. They're afraid of this title, even though I discussed those same media people in the book. Why am I laying this all out? Because I need all of y'all to understand what 2024 is all about. What you are witnessing, Ron DeSantis in Florida, Greg Abbott in Texas, that nutcase Kerry Lake and the people in Arizona, and then of course in South Carolina and Tennessee and North Carolina and Memphis, and Mississippi and Alabama, and we can go on and on and on. They know the only way they can win in 2024, how they can win the White House, how they can win the Senate, how they can keep control of the House, how they can win governor's mansions and state legislatures, they need to stoke white fear. Y'all, CRT, DEI, that is all about white fear. Moms for Liberty, who had the audacity to use a Maya Angelou quote on Mother's Day when they are literally trying to get rid of books written by Maya Angelou. I keep telling y'all we're connecting the dots here. And Mustafa, Randy, and Torun, black people had better not be asleep and get caught up in silliness and not realize what is at stake. These people do not want to see any initiatives that speak to the advancement of black people because they see what is going on. They see there are fewer white births. They see what's the white death rate is higher in about 12 to 15 states than the white birth rate. This whole great replacement theory, we see what they're doing is before our eyes. And if we sit at home and do not vote, these are the people who are going to be in power. Randy, you're first.
They absolutely want us to stay asleep, just like you just said. That's why they have the anti-woke moment. They do not want us to be aware and be intelligent about what is happening in this country. It was interesting to me how they showed the stats of the what's happening at the border, but they did not show the stats of crimes that are committed based in white violence and white supremacy.
Nope.
And those numbers have I found that very interesting. Those numbers have skyrocketed. And if you do the research, you will find that oftentimes what they do doesn't end up in deaths, but the violence is absolutely there, right? So that's one thing, how they avoided that altogether. If people were aware of what was happening, they would be angry and they would vote differently. And we would, as we have in the past, shown up at the polls. So this does, like you mentioned, go right along with what DeSantis is doing. They want us to be quiet. They want us to be not knowledgeable about what's happening in this world. White supremacy is what is unquestionably the biggest threat to this country, and they don't want us to be aware of it. I mean, these are people who won't even, they want to act like Africans being enslaved never really happened, and it wasn't that bad, and it was a really, really long time ago. And they don't want to talk about systemic racism because we all then would be outraged. So they try to silence us any way they possibly can.
Roland, I got a kick out of them talking about, oh my God, look at all these terrorists who are crossing the border. Go to my iPad. This is January 6th, folks. 500 guilty pleas, 900 arrests, more than 3,000 people could be charged. That's a hell of a lot more, folks. And guess what? Not many of those people look like me and you, Run.
Well, you know, even deeper than a political message of what's going on, what you're seeing right now is the power of messaging.
Yep.
Fox News is not playing to the informed voter. Fox News is playing to its base. And they just came off of this serious case with Dominion and Tucker Carlson that happened and everything. So what they're trying to do is ramp up this white supremacist rhetoric, but they're couching it in language where they don't have to necessarily say the N-word, but all you have to do is say, look at all these people who are coming across the border. Look at these black people who don't really have any issues. Somebody's ginning them up to have a conversation to get them outraged. And it's funny you mentioned the situation with Howard, because there is a historic thing that happens with a lot of white supremacists where they think that black people aren't intelligent enough to form their own opinions, that there has to be some invisible white hand directing black people, which is why so much hostility gets formed towards white people who may be allies to black people who are trying to push back against white supremacy. The other thing is this: Trump was what I would like to call, ignorant evil. The people who you mentioned, like Kerry Lake, DeSantis, and other people in other states who are pushing towards moving things right wing, they are intelligent evil, meaning they know enough to be quiet and they know how to not to make enough waves to make people outraged enough with them enough to push back against them. That makes them more dangerous. And all this stuff is couched in racist language, is couched in racist rhetoric. And the danger is, and which I talk about a lot, is that I think there's an opportunity for the DNC to be forward thinking, to say that, look, President Biden had called out white supremacy. This is a messaging that we can seize on, so we can say that these are things that need to be fought against, and this is what we stand for. So I think it's very dangerous if people don't get behind this and say that we are pushing back against this, and we're not going to let people control the narrative. And right now, I don't see that. It's very dangerous.
But see, Mustafa, again, I need people to understand, Fox News is the tip of the spear. They are the leader. And so when Biden gives his speech on Saturday, and again, this ain't the first time Biden has given a speech discussing white supremacy. I laid it out yesterday. He did it in Iowa in 2019 in a town that's 87% white, 8.5% black. Trust me, wasn't that many of us at that damn speech, okay? He did it again in his first speech, the joint session of Congress in 2021. Did it again in the State of the Union speech this year. Did it again at a summit that was held in the White House with a lot of white people in the audience. So when Harris Faulkner yesterday was like, Biden has never, I bet he wouldn't say this for the white people. He has. What they don't like is, and this is no different, this is why Senator Tommy Tuberville is out of Alabama is like, well, I see these white nationalists as Americans. He won't even condemn. They're calling and they're attacking the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, first African-American. Oh, all this woke, because they're trying to get rid of extremism in the military. And Congressman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has talked about white supremacy in law enforcement. Press play.
It's found that despite efforts, it doesn't look like things have improved. And I would like to submit both of these documents to the record.
Without objection.
Police officers have been dismissed across the United States, including Virginia, Texas, Florida, Michigan, Nebraska, and Louisiana, for having ties to the Ku Klux Klan. And we also know that more than 30 active or retired police officers joined the January 6th attack on the Capitol, and at least 7 are facing charges connected to that day. Director Langen, I take it you are familiar with this 2006 bulletin, correct?
I may have to review that bulletin, ma'am, to recall it exactly.
No worries. To your knowledge, what do we know about the radicalization efforts among certain officers already in police departments and the effort to recruit white nationalists joining police departments across the United States?
Yes, ma'am. Well, as I mentioned before, individuals that are in positions of trust and have radicalized ideas and gravitate towards hate and violence are very
Go to my
concerning.
iPad. This is from a Reuters investigation, May 6, 2022, where they lay out U.S. police trainers with far-right ties are teaching hundreds of cops. What we're seeing here, Mustafa, is that these radical extremists, these white nationalists, these white supremacists are invading military, law enforcement. This is real. The data is there. And that's why the Department of Defense wants them out. And guess what, Mustafa? When the bill was put forth to actually investigate and root out neo-Nazis and white supremacists in our military and law enforcement, nearly every Republican in the House voted against it. That is why Fox News is pissed off at the Biden speech at Howard. Final comment.
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is go back. So let's go back. 2017, 2018, over the Department of Homeland Security. You know, they actually had 3 reports that came out at that time through the threat assessment. And all those came back and they said that white supremacy is the national number 1 threat to the nation. And we know that white supremacy thrives off of both policies and laws. And that's the reason you see DeSantis, you see the governor of Texas, you see all these folks trying to change the laws and trying to change the policies so that they can then continue to erode people's rights. And that's why we have to stay woke. And that's why we have to continue to put a spotlight on this. And we've got to continue to fight.
And again, just for everybody, especially for the not bright yahoos over at Fox News, just so we understand here, go to my iPad. This is called a fact check. Every single House Republican voted against investigating neo-Nazis in the military. You will not see that discussed by Fox and Friends, by you, Will Kane, Rachel Campos Duffy, Peter Hegseth, or the really unfunny Greg Gutfield. Why? Because you will not discuss something when it's actually your audience. All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.